I want to tell you about a woman named Winifred. Not because her story is extraordinary, but because it is so ordinary that it might break your heart. She woke up on a Tuesday morning in March, same as any other Tuesday, except it was not. Because this particular Tuesday was her 67th birthday. And at 7:14 in the morning, her phone did not ring. It had always rung at 7:14 every year. Every single year for 40 years. Edmund never forgot, never got the time wrong, never called at 7:15, and pretended it was close enough. 7:14 because that was the minute she came into the world. He had looked it up on their first anniversary, written it down on a card, and never once let it pass without calling. 3 years now. 3 years of 7:14 coming and going, like a door that no longer opens. Winifred lay in bed and watched the ceiling, listened to the silence where his voice used to be, counted the seconds the way you count the space between lightning and thunder, waiting to see how far away the storm is, except the storm already came 3 years ago. And she was still standing in the wreckage, wondering why the sky looked so calm now. She got up anyway, because that is what Winifred does. She gets up. I have been watching her get up for 67 years. I watched her get up the morning after her father left. She was 9 years old and she made her own breakfast and walked herself to school and did not tell anyone, because that is who she was even then. Capable, quiet, carrying things no child should carry. I watched her get up the morning after she lost her first patient. A man named Gerald, 72. Heart failure. She had held his hand when he went. Driven home at 4 a.m. Saturday in her car in the driveway for 20 minutes. Then walked inside, changed her clothes, made coffee, and gone back. That is 35 years of getting up, 35 years of night shifts and 12-hour days, and holding other people's hands through the worst moments of their lives. 35 years of being the calm in someone else's storm, the steady voice, the one who knew what to do. And then Edmund died, and for the first time in her life, Winifred did not know what to do. He died on a Thursday, the 14th of March, 2021. A Thursday that looked exactly like every other Thursday in Ohio in early spring, a little gray, a little cold. The kind of day that does not warn you Edmund had been fine, more than fine. He had beaten the cancer 2 years before, 14 months of treatment, and he had beaten it. They had celebrated with a dinner at the restaurant where they had their first date. Winifred had worn the blue dress he always said was his favorite. Edmund had ordered the same thing he ordered 38 years earlier. Chicken parmesan, extra sauce. He said it tasted better the second time. 8 months later, he was cutting the grass in the backyard. Just cutting the grass. A thing he had done 1,000 times. And then he was not. Winifred was inside making sandwiches. She heard nothing. No sound, no call, no warning. Just the lawnmower still running, and running and running that sound. She still cannot hear a lawnmower without her chest doing something that has no name. I want to tell you what she found 4 days after the funeral. She was going through his desk. The old oak desk in the corner of the study that Edmund had owned since before they were married. She was not looking for anything specific. She was just moving, because stopping felt like sinking. She opened the middle drawer. Pens. A stapler. Some old receipts. A small notebook he used for crossword puzzles. And then, underneath all of it, an envelope. White, plain. Sealed. Her name on the front in his handwriting. That handwriting she would know anywhere. A little tilted to the right. The F in Freddie always a little too tall. She sat down on the floor. Right there on the study floor. Just sat down the way you sit down when your legs make the decision before you do. She held the envelope for a long time, turned it over, turned it back, pressed her thumb along the sealed edge, and then she could not. She just could not. She put it back in the drawer, closed it, stood up, walked to the kitchen, finished making the sandwiches even though there was no one to make them for. She put the envelope in a tin box, the kind that used to hold Christmas cookies, and she slid it under the bed. And she did not open it. For 3 years she did not open it. Because some doors, when you are not ready, you just do not. I knew she was not ready. I let her put it away, because I am not in the business of forcing open what a heart needs time to approach. I have been doing this a long time. I know the difference between avoidance and survival. And for 3 years, not opening that envelope was how Winifred survived. But I want you to understand something about those 3 years. I was there for all of them. Every morning she got up anyway. I was there. Every night she ate dinner alone at the kitchen table with the local news on because silence is worse than noise. I was there. Every Sunday she sat in the third pew from the back at church and sang the hymns she has known since childhood. Not because she felt anything, but because the words themselves were an anchor. I was there for that too. She thought I was not listening. She thought the prayers she whispered before bed were going somewhere dark and empty, like letters dropped into an ocean with no shore. She was wrong. I heard every word. I heard the words she said, and the words she could not say, and the long silences that were themselves a kind of prayer. The kind that comes when language fails, and all you have left is the weight of your own need pressing upward. I heard all of it. And I was already moving. Let me tell you about Callum, 43 years old, lives in Seattle, works for a software company, writes code that most people will never understand and fewer people will ever see. A good man, a man who loves his mother in the particular way that certain sons love their mothers, which is to say completely and helplessly, and with almost no ability to express it correctly. He calls every Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Ohio Time. Never misses. Which is a kind of Edmund in him that Winifred notices but never says out loud. He called the Sunday before her birthday. "Mom, we have been thinking, Rosalind and I, about the house." Winifred knew what was coming before he finished the sentence. Before the sentence was finished, she already knew its ending. "We think it might be time to consider number Mom Callum," one word, but the whole history of a woman who has made harder decisions than this one was in it. He heard it. He backed off, but not really, because he would come back to it. He always comes back to it, which is also something she recognizes from his father. Rosalind called 3 days later. Rosalind handles things differently than Callum. Callum suggests, Rosalind builds a case. "Mom, there is a really lovely community in Atlanta. I have looked into it. They have gardens and activities, and the people there are Rosalind. I appreciate it. You are alone in that house. I know I am alone in that house." Silence. "I know it every morning," Winifred said. "You do not have to remind me. They meant well. I need you to know that I know they meant well. Children who push too hard are often just children who are frightened." Callum and Rosalind had watched their father cut grass and not come back. They had learned in one Thursday afternoon that the world does not send warnings, that the people you love can simply stop. So they push, because pushing feels like doing something. And doing something feels safer than standing in the uncertainty of a world that contains lawnmowers and stopped hearts and no warnings at all. But here is what they did not understand. Here is what I wish they could see. That house is not a house to Winifred. It is the place where Edmund still exists. The coffee mug he always used is still in the cabinet. She does not use it, but she does not move it either. His reading glasses are on the side table by the armchair. 3 years, and she has not moved them. The smell of him is gone from the pillow, which was its own small grief when she noticed. But the shape of the life they built together is still in every corner. In the scratch on the kitchen door frame where they marked the children's heights. In the garden he planted the spring. He got his diagnosis, not knowing if he would see it bloom. He saw it bloom twice, and Winifred sees it still, every spring. And it is an unbearable kind of beautiful. You do not sell that. You do not box it up and move to Atlanta for activities and gardens that someone else planted. March moved the way March moves in Ohio. Reluctantly, in fits. A warm day followed by frost, followed by rain, followed by a sky so flat and gray you begin to wonder if color was a temporary arrangement. Winifred moved through it the way she had moved through the last 3 years. 1 foot, then the other. Grocery shopping on Wednesdays. Church on Sundays. The garden when the weather allowed. Bills paid on the 1st of the month. The way you maintain a structure when the thing that gave the structure meaning is gone. She was not unhappy in a dramatic way. This is important. She was not lying in bed unable to move. She was not falling apart at the seams in any visible way. She was functioning. She was competent. She was, to any outside observer, fine. But I saw what was underneath the fine. She had stopped wanting things, not in the way of depression exactly, more like. The machinery of desire had simply wound down. She used to want things, small things. A good book, a weekend, drive to the lake. The particular pleasure of a meal that took all afternoon to cook. She used to look forward, and somewhere in the last 3 years, forward had become just more of the same, which is a different kind of loss, quieter than grief, harder to name, but just as real. She was alive, and she was getting up every morning, and she was doing all the right things. But she had forgotten what it felt like to be Winifred. Not Edmund's wife, not Callum and Rosalind's mother, not the woman who used to be a nurse. Just Winifred. The woman herself, the one I made. The one I have been watching and loving and refusing to give up on since before she had a name. She had forgotten she existed in her own right. And that is the first seal. It was a Wednesday in the 3rd week of March when Vivienne Cross knocked on her door. Pastor of the small church on Hendricks Avenue, where Winifred had sat in the 3rd pew for the last 11 years, a tall woman. Direct in the way that some people mistake for unkindness until they understand that it is actually a form of respect. Vivienne Cross does not talk to you the way people talk to someone they feel sorry for. She talks to you the way people talk to someone they believe in. Winifred made coffee. They sat at the kitchen table. The one Edmund had built himself the year they moved in. She did not think about Edmund every time she sat at it anymore, which was its own complicated thing. Like the grief had moved further back in the room but had not left. "How are you?" Vivienne asked. "Fine," Winifred said, because that was the word she had for it. Vivienne looked at her for a moment, the way she looks at things directly, without the social nicety of looking slightly away. "Freddie, can I ask you something?" "You are going to regardless," which made Vivienne smile. A small one. "If Edmund could see you right now, this morning, sitting here. She paused. What would break his heart the most? Winifred opened her mouth to say something sensible. Something like, "I think he would understand." Or something like, "He would want me to take care of myself." But the words that were actually true were already rising, and she could not stop them. She looked at her coffee cup. He would be heartbroken, she thought, not said. He would be heartbroken because I am living like I already died with him. She did not say it out loud, but she did not have to. Vivienne seemed to know anyway, because she simply sat there, did not fill the silence with comfort, did not rush to fix it. Just let the truth sit in the room with them like a third person. When Vivienne left an hour later, Winifred stood in the doorway and watched her walk down the front path. She did not sleep well that night, but not because of pain, because of a question. Because something Vivienne had said or had not said had moved something that had been very still for a very long time. And I want you to know that I sent Vivienne that afternoon. I want you to know it was not coincidence, not a casual visit, not a neighborly check-in. I sent her because Winifred had been ready for longer than she knew. She just needed someone to ask the right question at the right time. I have been in the business of right timing since before time existed. And this was the morning the first seal began to crack. Not broke open, not yet, but cracked. The way ice cracks in early spring, quietly, beneath the surface, before anyone can see it, before even the woman standing on it knows that something is beginning to give way. She went to bed that night with Vivienne's question still sitting in the middle of her chest. What would break his heart the most? She lay in the dark. Edmund's side of the bed still his side after 3 years, because some habits are not about forgetting. They are about honoring. She stared at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, she did not just feel the absence of Edmund. She felt the presence of something else, something that had been quiet and patient and waiting. She could not name it yet. She would not name it for a while still. But it was there, and it knew her name, and it had been saying it, softly, steadily, without ceasing for 67 years. Some mornings arrive like an argument, cold and insistent, pressing against the windows before you are ready for them, demanding you get up and face whatever the day has decided to bring. The morning after Vivienne's visit was like that. Winifred was awake before the alarm, which meant she had been lying there thinking, which meant the question had followed her into sleep and back out again. The way certain questions do. The ones that are not really questions, the ones that are answers you are not quite ready to say out loud yet. She made coffee, stood at the kitchen window, watched the backyard the way she often did in the morning. Edmund's garden coming back to life at the edges, the first pale green things pushing up through the cold Ohio soil. Every spring she watched this and felt two things at exactly the same time: wonder and devastation. Because beauty and loss are not opposites. Sometimes they are the same event wearing different faces. She drank her coffee. She did not think about the question, except she did not think about anything else. I want to tell you something about the way I work. People expect the dramatic, the burning bush, the voice from the sky, the unmistakable sign delivered in a way that removes all doubt. But most of the time I work in the ordinary, in the Tuesday morning, and the cup of coffee, and the old filing cabinet in the corner that nobody has opened in 18 months. Which is where we begin. The second week of April. Winifred was going through some papers, not for any particular reason, just the low-level maintenance of a life. The kind of task you do to feel useful when feeling useful is the only thing holding you upright. She opened the filing cabinet and found, behind a folder labeled Insurance House, another folder. Edmund's handwriting. Insurance, other inside. A contract. A life insurance rider Edmund had added to a policy 6 years ago. She had known about it vaguely, the way you know about things your husband handles, because he has always handled them, and you trust him to handle them. She read the contract. Then she read it again. The coverage period had ended 14 months ago, 18 months. Actually, if you counted the grace period, she was still paying $340 every month. Had been paying it since Edmund died, because the automatic payment was set up, because no one had looked. Because when you are managing grief, and a household and a life that no longer has its co-pilot, some things just keep running. Without you noticing, she called the insurance company. She was on hold for 22 minutes. She counted. Not because she was impatient, but because counting is a thing she does with her hands when her mind needs something small and manageable to hold on to. A woman named Brenda eventually picked up, and Winifred explained the situation calmly, clearly, the way a nurse explains a medical history, just the facts in the right order. And she asked for her money back. Brenda said she would look into it. Winifred said that would be fine, but she would call back tomorrow if she had not heard anything. And the day after that, if necessary. She hung up and sat for a moment at the kitchen table. It was such a small thing, a phone call, a filing cabinet, an insurance policy that should have been canceled a year and a half ago. But here is what I need you to understand about that small thing. For 3 years, every financial decision in Winifred's life had gone through Callum. Not because he demanded it, but because after Edmund died, she had simply handed it over. She had simply let him take it. The way exhausted people do, without discussion, without ceremony. And Callum had taken it because that is how he loves, by carrying things. But this one she had found herself, handled herself, was following up on herself. It was not a miracle, it was a phone call. But sometimes, a phone call is the first brick, and the first brick is everything. 2 days later, she got a check in the mail for $4,250. 12 months of payments, the maximum the company would refund under their policy. Not everything she was owed, but enough. She stood at the mailbox and looked at it for a long moment. The Ohio wind doing that thing it does in April where it cannot make up its mind. Then she went inside, made herself a cup of tea, and called Callum not to report the situation and ask what to do, but to tell him what she had done. There was a small silence on the line before he responded. "That is great, Mom." But she heard something else in his voice. Something he did not say. Something like surprise. And then, underneath the surprise, something like relief. The particular relief of a child who realizes their parent is still in there, still capable, still themselves. She deposited the check the next morning. On the way home, she stopped at the nursery and bought 3 new plants for Edmund's garden. Not because she needed them, because she wanted them. Wanted. She turned that word over in her mind the whole drive home, like finding a coin you did not know you had lost. So ordinary. So completely ordinary. And yet, it was a Saturday when she first really spoke to Silas Morrow. She had seen him for years. Of course she had. He was her neighbor. But seeing a person and knowing a person are 2 entirely different countries with no direct road between them. Silas Morrow, 72. Retired history teacher. The kind of man who has strong opinions about the correct way to maintain a lawn and is not shy about communicating them. She had heard him on multiple occasions, sighing loudly in the direction of the house on the corner that let their grass grow too long. As if the sighing would accomplish something, as if grass would respond to editorial disapproval. She had, privately, found this slightly ridiculous. But on this particular Saturday morning, she came outside to check on the new plants and found Silas sitting on his front porch steps, not doing anything, not reading, not drinking coffee, not sighing at anyone's lawn, just sitting, looking at the middle distance with the particular expression of a man whose thoughts have gone somewhere he did not necessarily choose to go. She almost went back inside. Except she had 2 cups of coffee's worth of grounds already made, and he looked the way she had looked. That morning after the funeral, when she sat in the car in the driveway for 20 minutes, not unable to move, just not yet ready to move, she went inside, made 2 cups, came back out. "Coffee," she said, holding one toward him the way you offer something across a fence. He looked at it, looked at her, then nodded once, the way men of a certain age and disposition accept kindness. Briefly, without making a production of it, she sat on her own porch steps. They were maybe 15 feet apart, which felt like the right distance. They did not talk for a while, just drank their coffee. The Ohio morning doing its April thing around them, mild and tentative and faintly hopeful. Then Silas said, without looking at her, "My wife had Alzheimer's," not as a beginning, more like a fact that needed to be put somewhere outside of him for a moment. Winifred waited. The last year. He paused, turned his coffee cup in his hands. She did not know who I was, did not know her own name most days. I would go every morning and sit with her, and she would look at me like I was a stranger. The neighborhood was quiet around them, just the sound of the wind in the oak tree at the edge of his yard. People would ask me why I kept going. He said it without bitterness, just observation. Why I still brought her flowers, still brushed her hair, still read to her from the books she used to love. A pause, I told them. I am not doing this so she remembers me. I am doing this because she is the person I chose, and I do not stop choosing her just because she cannot choose me back. Winifred held her coffee cup with both hands and felt something shift somewhere in her chest. Not dramatically, not with any sound or visible evidence, not dramatically, not with any sound, but enormous. The kind of shift that changes everything about the landscape before anyone notices it has moved. Slow and enormous, and changing everything about the landscape even though you cannot see it happening. Because she had been carrying something she had not had language for until just now. She had been treating grief as evidence that something went wrong. Loving Edmund and losing Edmund, and the particular devastation of the lawnmower still running. She had been holding all of it like an accusation, like the universe had made an error, like the pain was a sign that something had failed. But that is not what Silas was describing. He was describing love that cost everything and paying it anyway, and not calling that a failure. She looked at Edmund's garden. The new plants she had put in 3 days ago, the perennials coming back on their own because that is what perennials do. They come back. My husband died in the backyard, she said. Not to make conversation, just because it was true and the morning felt like a place where true things could be said without needing to be managed. I know, Silas said. I saw the ambulance. They sat with that for a moment. I am sorry, he said. 2 words, plain and insufficient, and the only words that exist for that particular thing. And he said them the right way. without trying to fix anything, without the nervous reassurances that people sometimes add because the silence after "I am sorry" makes them uncomfortable. He just let them land. Winifred nodded, and they finished their coffee in the company of each other's quiet. And the morning opened up the way mornings sometimes do when you have put down something you did not know you were carrying. I placed Silas Morrow on that porch step for a reason. I need you to understand that. He did not decide on his own to sit there that morning. Or rather, he did decide. But I was behind the decision, the way I am often behind things that look like coincidence from the outside, because Winifred needed to hear what Silas said about choosing, about love that does not stop, just because the other person cannot choose you back. She needed to hear it in that language, in the plain, unsentimental language of a man who did what he did, not because it was beautiful, but because it was right. Because she had been asking herself, in the quiet, whether loving Edmund still 3 years on, still talking to him in her head, still buying plants for his garden, still feeling his absence, persistent, involuntary, always exactly where something used to be. Whether any of that was healthy, whether she was stuck, whether she should be further along by now, on some imagined schedule of grief that other people seem to be consulting. And the answer is, there is no schedule. There is only love. And the way love persists in the people it has shaped. And the fact that Edmund Ashworth shaped Winifred Ashworth over 40 years, and the shape of that does not dissolve in 3 because the world thinks it should. She was not stuck. She was faithful. There is a difference. Rosalind called on a Tuesday evening in late April. She was calling with news. Good news. The kind of news that rearranges the air in a conversation. "Mom, I am pregnant." Winifred sat down in Edmund's armchair, the one she never sits in. Saturday in it anyway. "Oh, sweetheart. 14 weeks. We have been waiting to tell you. I wanted to make sure." A breath. "You are going to be a grandmother." The word landed in Winifred's chest like a stone dropped in still water. Rings going out and out and out. She had wanted this, had not let herself want it too openly, because wanting things openly had started to feel dangerous. But she had wanted it. "I want you to come, Mom. When it gets closer, I want you here. I will be there. I mean, come and stay for a while after." A small pause. "I will come and visit, Rosalind. Mom, I will come and be there for everything important. I promise you that." Rosalind went quiet, the way she goes quiet when she is deciding whether to push. She decided to push. "The house is too big for one person. The house is mine. I know it is yours. I just Rosalind, not sharp, but final. The way a door closes firmly without slamming. I will be there. I will hold that baby. I will be exactly the grandmother you need me to be. And I will do it from a home that is mine. That is the arrangement." Another silence. Then quietly, "I just worry about you." And Winifred heard it then. Underneath the pushing and the management and the reasonable suggestions about Atlanta communities with gardens, she heard the same thing she had heard in Callum's voice: fear. The pure and honest fear of a child who has already learned what it looks like when someone you love is there one moment and gone the next. "I know you do," Winifred said. Softer now. "I worry about me too sometimes. That is allowed. But it does not mean I need to be moved." Callum called the following Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Ohio. And this call was different. She knew it from his first hello. The way you know things from the first hello of someone you have known for 43 years. Before they find the words for what they are carrying, can I just? Say something, Mom. Yes. A long pause. I am scared. Just that. 3 words with nothing decorating them. No softening. No context. Just the bare fact of it. I am not scared about the house. I am not scared about Atlanta or any of that. I am scared that one day I am going to call on Sunday and you are not going to pick up. And I will not know. And it will be like Dad. How we did not know until after. The room was very quiet. Winifred looked at the reading glasses on the side table. The ones that had been there for 3 years. Callum, she said, I know it is irrational. It is not irrational. A pause. But I need you to hear what you just said. You are letting the fear of losing me decide how I get to live. And I understand why. But that is not fair to either of us. Silence. Your father did not die because he was living his life. Her voice steady, not angry, just true. He died because his heart stopped. That can happen anywhere. In Atlanta, in Columbus, on any given Thursday that looks like every other Thursday. She heard him breathing on the line. I am not going to stop living so that you can worry less. That is not love, sweetheart. That is just 2 people being afraid in the same direction. A long pause. Then, quietly, something that might have been a laugh if it were not so close to a sob. When did you get so direct? I was always direct, Winifred said. You just were not listening. I need to stop here. I need to stop here and tell you what I saw in that phone call. Because what looked like a difficult conversation was actually something else entirely. It was Winifred's voice coming back. Not the managing voice, not the capable in a crisis voice she had been running on for 3 years. Her voice, the one that says true things in plain language without apology, the one that told Edmund on their 3rd date that she did not have time for people who were not serious about their lives. The one that had, over 35 years of nursing, spoken truth to patients and families in the moments when truth was the only medicine left. That voice had been very quiet, and I had been waiting for it, because here is the thing about the second seal, the one over relationships. It is never really about the other people. It is about the self that got lost in the grief of losing someone essential. When Edmund died, Winifred did not just lose her husband. She lost the person she was when she was with him. Because we are partly built by the people who love us, and when they go, we have to find those parts again in ourselves. She was finding them. 1 phone call, 1 cup of coffee on a porch. 1 conversation with a pastor who asked a question instead of offering comfort. Small things, but the seal was cracking. It was the first Wednesday of May. Winifred had not intended to stop at the church on Hendricks Avenue. She was driving back from the garden center. 3 flats of annuals on the back seat. The Ohio afternoon finally delivering on the warmth it had been promising for weeks. She saw the lights on in the fellowship hall. And she stopped. Not with any particular plan, just stopped. The way you sometimes follow an instinct before your mind has caught up to it. She went in. The fellowship hall was full of women. 8 of them, somewhere between 65 and 85, sitting in a rough circle with phones in their hands and the particular expression of people who have been asked to do something that makes them feel slightly foolish. Vivienne was standing at the front, looking for the first time since Winifred had known her, slightly overwhelmed. She was trying to teach them to video call their grandchildren. The results were energetically varied. 1 woman had somehow turned her camera to face the ceiling and could not work out how to turn it back. Another had the volume so high that the tinny sound of a ringing phone filled the room at regular intervals. A third had taken a photograph of her own knees and was asking why the screen looked like that. Winifred sat down, and without announcing herself or asking permission, she turned to the woman next to her, a small woman named Dorothy who was holding her phone the way you hold something that might bite you, and said, "May I show you something?" Dorothy looked at her with the expression of someone who has given up understanding things but is willing to be shown. Winifred talked her through it, step by step. Not slowly in the way that is condescending, slowly in the way that is patient, the way she had talked patients through procedures for 35 years. Clear, calm, no assumption that anything was obvious. No impatience with confusion. Dorothy's granddaughter appeared on the screen, and Dorothy made a sound that was not quite words. The kind of sound a heart makes when it gets something it has been quietly starving for. Winifred moved to the next woman and the next, untangling problems, explaining things twice when once was not enough, turning cameras the right way around, finding the volume button, showing the photograph to the woman who had taken a picture of her own knees and saying with complete sincerity, "Actually, that is very clear. You figured out the camera." An hour later, as people were leaving, Vivienne came and stood beside her. "You are good at that," she said. Winifred looked up. "I am a nurse. Was a nurse. I explained things for a living. You were explaining things for a living. Now you are doing it for free on a Wednesday afternoon." A pause. Same result, though. Winifred began to say something modest. Something about how she just happened to be passing. Vivienne said, "We do this every Wednesday. Would you come back?" And Winifred said yes. Before the no she might have said had time to form. There was a woman sitting in the corner who had not spoken all afternoon. 74 years old, gray hair cut close, hands in her lap. The particular stillness of someone who has recently been cracked open and has not yet figured out how to be in the world with the crack visible. Her name was Octavia. Winifred noticed her the way nurses notice things. Not with words, just a registration. A note made in some internal chart. At the end of the afternoon, as Winifred was putting on her coat, Octavia came and stood next to her. They stood for a moment in the way people stand when they have something to say and are not sure if they have the right. Then Octavia said, "My husband passed 4 months ago." Winifred turned to look at her. "I have not been able to talk to anyone since. People say things and I hear them, but I cannot." She stopped, started again. "Today is the first time I have been somewhere and felt like I was still here, still in the room." A pause. "I do not know why I am telling you." Winifred took off her coat and sat back down. "I know why," she said. They sat there for another hour. After everyone else had gone, after Vivienne had turned off the fellowship hall lights and left the small lamp in the corner on and said nothing, because she understood what was happening. 2 women, different years of the same country, sitting in a pool of lamplight on a Wednesday evening in Ohio. Not fixing anything, not solving anything. Just present. And I want you to understand what that hour meant. Not to Octavia, though it meant everything to Octavia, but to Winifred, because Winifred spent 35 years being the presence, the one who showed up and sat and held the hand and made the unbearable slightly less so. And then Edmund died, and she stopped. She thought the capacity had gone with him somehow. She thought that part of herself was his, and without him, it had no place to live. But here she was, still herself, still capable of that particular quality of presence that some people are simply made with and no amount of grief can remove. The gift had not gone anywhere. It had just been waiting for her to be ready to give it again. She drove home in the dark. Ohio evening in May. The air doing that thing it finally does in May when it gives up being cold and commits to something warmer. The first real evening of the year where you can roll down the window and not regret it. She rolled down the window. The air came in. And I want you to know what I was doing in that car. I was doing what I have been doing for 67 years, watching her. Staying close. Moving things into position before she arrived at them so that when she got there, what she needed would be waiting. The insurance claim. That was me. Not because I care about insurance, but because Winifred needed to find her own competence again. Needed to discover that the capability she had given to Edmund and then to Callum was still hers. Silas on the porch steps. That was me. Because she needed someone to tell her that loving well is worth the cost in plain language. From someone who knew Octavia in the corner of the fellowship hall. That was me. Because Winifred needed to see that what she carries is not a burden. It is a gift. And gifts do not expire. And tomorrow, I am going to ask her to do something she has not been able to do. I am going to ask her to open the tin box under the bed. Not because she is ready in the way of having no fear, but because she is ready in the way of being strong enough to do it afraid. And there is a difference. She parked in the driveway Saturday for a moment with the engine off. The way she used to sit after night shifts, not unable to go inside. Just taking a moment to complete the transition from one world to another. The backyard was dark. Edmund's garden a shadow of shapes she knew, by feel more than by sight. She went inside, made tea, stood at the kitchen window, then she walked to the bedroom, got down on her knees, pulled the tin box out from under the bed, set it on the mattress, lifted the lid. The envelope was there, white, plain, her name in his handwriting. The F in Freddie still too tall. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, her hands in her lap, the envelope on the mattress in front of her. And then, the silence in the room changed. The way it had changed that morning after Vivienne's question, a quality of presence that had no explanation. Not frightening, not dramatic, just there. The way light is there when you open a door you have kept closed, and what she felt not heard, not saw, but felt. In the way you feel a hand placed on your shoulder in the dark was this. You are not alone in this room. You have never been alone in any room. Open it, Freddie. I have been waiting with you. She picked up the envelope, broke the seal. The unopened envelope, part 3. The woman who went to Lisbon. Inside the envelope were 2 things. 2 airline tickets. Lisbon, Portugal. Departure the 14th of September 2021. Return the 24th of September. 2 seats. Side by side. And tucked behind the tickets, folded once, a small piece of paper in Edmund's handwriting. Not a letter, not a long declaration. Just a list. Geronimo's Monastery. Morning. Pastel de nata from the bakery near the waterfront. The Tagus River at sunset. One afternoon of doing absolutely nothing. That was it. That was the whole list. Winifred sat on the edge of the bed and read it 3 times. Then a 4th. Not because the words were complicated. Because they were so completely Edmund. No grand romantic gestures, no eloquent speeches. Just a man who had watched his wife give everything to everyone for 40 years and thought, she needs an afternoon of doing nothing. And then planned it. In a city she had mentioned once, years ago, as somewhere she had always wanted to go. He had remembered. Of course, he had remembered. She turned the paper over, and on the back, in smaller handwriting, a postscript pressed harder into the paper, like he had wanted to make sure it stayed. P.S. You have spent your whole life taking care of everyone, Freddie. This trip is just for you. You have more than earned it. Love always, Ed. She pressed the paper flat against her knee. And the thing that broke open in her then was not grief exactly. It was older than grief, deeper. It was the particular ache of being known, fully known, by someone who saw exactly what you gave and exactly what it cost and chose, quietly and without announcement, to give something back. She had not known she was starving for that until she felt it. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The Ohio night outside the window, the tin box open beside her, the tickets in her hand with their expired dates, and I was there with her in that room. I want you to know that I was there, not speaking, not explaining. Just present the way I am always present in the rooms where people finally break open into something true. I have been in every one of those rooms, every single one, and I am never not moved by them. By the moment a human heart finally stops defending itself and just feels what it has been carrying. She cried for a long time, not the polite crying she had done at the funeral with people watching, the other kind. The kind you only do alone. The kind that comes from a place so far down it has no name. When it was over, she felt emptied out, but not in the way of loss, in the way of a room that has been cleaned, lighter, clearer, ready for something. She put the tickets and the note back in the envelope, put the envelope on the nightstand where she could see it, got into bed, and slept better than she had slept in 3 years. The next morning she called Callum, not to tell him what she had found. Not yet. She called him because she wanted to hear his voice. Just that, just his voice at 8 a.m. on a Thursday, because he is her son and she loves him. And she had spent enough time managing the relationship and not enough time simply being in it. He picked up on the second ring, surprised. She never called on a Thursday. "Mom, everything okay?" "Everything is fine," she said. "I just wanted to talk." A pause. Then something shifted in his voice. The managing mode dropping away. "Just Callum." "Okay," he said, and she could hear him settling into it. "Yeah, okay." They talked for 40 minutes. About nothing important, about his work and Rosalind's pregnancy and a restaurant he had been to that he thought she would like, and a documentary he had watched about birds that he could not explain why he had found so moving, but he had just talked. When she hung up, she sat for a moment and thought about how long it had been since she had called either of her children just to talk. Not to report, not to reassure, just to be their mother in the ordinary daily sense of it too long. The second seal had not just been about letting people in. It had been about reaching out. About remembering that love is not a thing that maintains itself. It requires the small regular acts of choosing. The Thursday morning phone call. The coffee brought to a neighbor's porch steps. The hours spent in a lamplit fellowship hall with a woman whose grief was newer than yours, but the same shape. Love is a practice, not a feeling. Edmund had known that. He had practiced it for 40 years, in lists and plane tickets and phone calls at 7:14 in the morning, and Winifred Ashworth, who had been his student in this as in so many things, was finally ready to practice it again herself. She went to the Wednesday session at the church for the 3rd week in a row. Octavia was there. They sat near each other without making a production of it, just gravitated the way people do when they have shared something real. Afterward, walking to the parking lot, Octavia said, "I called my daughter last week. We had not spoken properly in 2 years." Winifred looked at her. She cried. Octavia said, "I cried. It was a disaster." A pause. It was the best phone call I have had in years. Winifred smiled, and Octavia looked at her with the particular directness of someone who has recently stopped having patience for anything less than honest. "You are the reason I made that call," she said. "I want you to know that." Winifred did not know what to say, which was unusual, so she said nothing. "Well, it'd be enough. I want to tell you what I saw in that parking lot. I saw a woman receiving, not saying, 'Oh, it was nothing,' or 'I did not do much.' Just receiving, standing still, and letting the truth of what she had given actually land. That is the third seal. Not the doing, the receiving, the allowing. The willingness to stand in a parking lot in Ohio on a Wednesday afternoon and accept that you matter to someone, that what you carry is not a burden but a gift, and other people can feel the difference. Winifred had been sealed against receiving for so long she had forgotten it was possible. The seal was open now. She booked the ticket on a Thursday evening in June. One ticket, Lisbon, the 14th of September. Return the 24th of September. Same dates Edmund had chosen. She did that deliberately. Saturday, with the deliberateness of it for a moment before pressing confirm. This was not avoidance of the past. This was walking toward it with both hands open. She called Callum. "I am going to Lisbon in September," she said. Silence. "Portugal," he said. "There is only one Lisbon, Callum. Mom, your father bought tickets for this trip 3 years ago. I found them in his desk. He planned it for our 40th anniversary." A pause. "I am going. I am just going later than he intended." The silence was different this time. Not resistance. Something else. Something working its way through. "He never told me about that," Callum said finally. "He never told anyone. That was very him." Another pause. And then, quietly, "Yeah, it was." She heard it. The grief in it. The love in it. The complicated mix of things that is what we carry for the people who shaped us. "Come home for Thanksgiving," she said. "Both of you, Rosalind, too. I will cook." "You sure?" "I have been cooking Thanksgiving for 40 years. I think I remember how." She heard him smile. Not saw it. Heard it. In the breath before he spoke. "Yeah," he said. "Okay. Yeah." Silas knocked on her door in late August. She had not seen him much through the summer. Glimpses, a wave. The comfortable acknowledgement of two people who have shared something real and do not need to perform around it. He stood on her porch with the expression of a man who has practiced what he wants to say and is hoping it comes out in the right order. "I wanted to tell you something," he said. She waited. "I was going to sell the house. In March, had already called a realtor. Planned to move to be near my daughter in Colorado." He paused, looked at the oak tree in his yard. "And then you brought me coffee, and I do not know. He stopped. "I decided to stay another season, and then another. I am glad I did." Winifred stood in her doorway. "I am glad you stayed," she said, and she meant it in all the ways it could be meant. He nodded, turned to go, then turned back. One morning in July, she had mentioned it to him. Not the whole story, just that she was going to Portugal in September. A trip Edmund had planned. She had not meant to say that much, but they were on their second cup of coffee and the morning was warm, and some things come out when you are not guarding against them. Silas had nodded once, not made a production of it, just nodded the way he does when he is filing something away. "Have a good trip," he said, as if he had known about it without being told, which she supposed was what happened when you paid attention to your neighbors. You just new things. I will, she said. The 14th of September arrived the way important days sometimes do, quietly, without fanfare, looking, from the outside, like any other Sunday morning in Ohio. Winifred drove herself to the airport. She had refused all offers of being driven, not out of stubbornness, out of something else. This was her trip. The beginning of it was hers too. The quiet of the car at 5 a.m., the empty highway, the particular quality of a world that is not yet awake. She had earned this solitude. She wanted to feel it. She checked her bag, found her gate. Saturday with a coffee and watched the planes. She was 67 years old. She was traveling alone to a country she had never been to. She had a list in her pocket written in her dead husband's handwriting. She realized, not afraid. She was the furthest thing from afraid. Lisbon arrived below the plane window like a dream of a city. White buildings climbing hills, the wide silver mouth of the Tagus opening toward the Atlantic, the light doing something she had no word for. Something about the angle of it. The quality. She pressed her face close to the window, the way Callum used to as a boy when they flew anywhere. And she thought, Edmund. Look, Edmund, look at this. She felt him look. I want to be honest with you about what I mean by that. I am not telling you he was there in the way of the living. I am telling you that love, the real kind, the 40-year kind, the 7:14 every morning kind, does not have an off switch. It persists in the people who carry it. It persists in the habits of the heart. And Winifred Ashworth, who had been shaped by Edmund's love for 4 decades, carried him in the way she saw things. In the noticing, in the tendency to look up and think, someone else should see this. He had made her that way. And that does not go away. She did everything on the list. The Geronimo's monastery in the morning, standing inside it with her neck tilted back, looking at the ceiling the way you stand inside something old and enormous and feel your own smallness as a gift rather than a diminishment. Pastel de nata from the bakery near the waterfront. Sitting on a wall in the sun eating pastry and not caring about the powdered sugar on her jacket, tasting something and thinking, this is good. This is just good. The Tagus River at sunset. Sitting on a bench on the waterfront watching the light change over the water. The sky doing impossible things with color. The kind of sky that makes you understand why people throughout all of history have looked up and believed in something larger than themselves. She stayed until the light was gone, and on the 3rd day she found the afternoon of doing nothing. She sat in a small square she had wandered into without a plan. Old stone underfoot, a fountain in the center, a cat sleeping on a wall, the sound of the city going about its business at a comfortable distance. She did not read, did not look at her phone, did not plan the evening, or consider what she should see tomorrow, or make any kind of list. She just sat and felt the sun, and breathed the particular air of a city that has been standing for a very long time, and has seen enough of human life to take the long view of things. And I was there. Of course I was there. I am everywhere she is. I have always been everywhere she is. And what I felt, watching her sit in that square in the Lisbon afternoon, was what I always feel when one of mine finally puts down what they have been carrying and simply rests. Something that, in your language, you would call joy. She reached into her bag for her water bottle, and her hand found the envelope instead. She had brought it with her. She had not planned to. But there it was. She took it out. Took out the small piece of paper. Read the list. Read the postscript. P.S. You have spent your whole life taking care of everyone, Freddie. This trip is just for you. You have more than earned it. Love always, Ed. She sat with it for a long time. Then she looked up at the sky over Lisbon, the particular blue of it, the depth of it, and she said quietly to no one who was sitting next to her and to everyone who was, "Thank you." 2 words. For Edmund, for the trip he planned, for 40 years of being known, for Callum and Rosalind and the grandchild coming in the winter, for Silas on his porch steps, for Octavia in the lamplight, for Vivienne and the question that cracked the first seal open, for the insurance claim and the phone call on a Thursday and the plants she put in the garden, for all of it. Every small, ordinary piece of all of it. She sat in the square in Lisbon until the cat woke up and stretched and walked away, until the shadows came, until the evening settled over the city like a hand placed gently on a shoulder. Then she folded the paper, put it back in the envelope, put the envelope in her bag, and stood up. Ready, not finished. Not arrived at some final destination where everything is resolved and nothing hurts. Just ready. Ready for the grandmother she was about to become. For the Thanksgiving table she was going to fill. For the Wednesday afternoons in the fellowship hall. For the coffee on the porch with Silas. For the Sunday calls with Callum. For the life that had been waiting patiently for her to come back to it. She walked out of the square, into the Lisbon evening, into whatever comes next, and I walked with her, the way I have always walked with her, the way I am walking with you. Right now, in whatever room you are sitting in as you hear these words, whatever weight you are carrying, whatever envelope you have been keeping in a tin box under the bed because you were not ready and the time was not right, I see it. I have always seen it, and I am telling you the way I told Winifred, in the quiet way that does not shout but does not stop. The time is coming. The seal is cracking, and I am right here. I have always been right here. Amen.